What if I told you the greatest scam sold to men isn't divorce, it's marriage itself? Everywhere you look, you see the same picture. Men who once lived like lions now drag themselves through life like tired pack animals. They chased wild dreams. They made bold moves. They stayed out until sunrise, chasing freedom. Now, they push grocery carts filled with food they didn't choose, memorizing yogurt brands like their marriage depends on it. Look into their eyes. The spark is gone, replaced by quiet resignation, by that silent yes, dear, that speaks louder than words. And here's the sting: no man decides this overnight. Nobody wakes up and says, "Today, I'll become a watered-down version of myself." It doesn't crash down in a single moment. It leaks in, slowly, subtly, almost invisibly. Step by step, freedom turns into compromise. Passion hardens into duty. Leadership collapses into permission-seeking. And by the time most men realize what's happening, the transformation is complete. Most men think this is just what marriage does. But the truth is, it's engineered, designed, a psychological machinery that turns independent men into compliant workhorses. And here's the dangerous part: once you see it, you'll never be able to unsee it. So the real question isn't if it happens, it's when. And more importantly, how does the lion become the donkey? Stick with me, because in this video, I'm going to expose the hidden system behind that transformation. And once you understand it, you'll finally see the cage for what it is. And maybe, just maybe, you'll be brave enough to walk out. Walk into any grocery store on a Saturday morning and you'll spot him instantly. Shoulders slumped, eyes vacant, cart loaded with kale and gluten-free pasta he'll never eat. He isn't shopping, he's on assignment. Every item checked off a list written in a handwriting that isn't his own. What nobody tells you is that cart is heavier than it looks, because it's carrying the last pieces of a man's freedom. This is the same guy who once stayed out until sunrise, arguing philosophy with strangers. The same man who drove cross-country on a whim, just to see what was there. Back then, his life was fire, chaos, creation. Now he's stuck calculating if the joint account can cover the exact brand of cheese his wife mentioned. Not the lion he once was, but a donkey rehearsing his apology before he even gets home. Most people think marriage tames men because they grow up. But the truth is, it's not maturity, it's domestication. Psychologists call this learned helplessness when effort feels pointless, resistance fades, and compliance becomes the default. That's why he doesn't fight anymore. He tells himself he's being considerate, when really he's just surrendering piece by piece. Look closer at any suburban neighborhood, and you'll see the pattern on repeat. Men who once commanded boardrooms now ask permission to buy a six-pack. Former rebels who challenged authority now text their wives for clearance before grabbing a drink with friends. Champions who conquered obstacles now negotiate for an extra hour of sleep. This isn't love. This is obedience dressed in romance. And here's the part that should terrify you. It never feels like a collapse. It feels like compromise. Step by step, freedom is traded for approval. By the time he realizes what's happening, the transformation is already complete. Which raises the real question. If it isn't an accident, then what machinery is driving this silent domestication? Before we tear apart the machinery, we have to face the bait that lures men into it. Marriage doesn't advertise itself as a cage. It sells itself as a partnership. 2 equals, 1 team. Shared dreams, mutual support. Who wouldn't want that? It sounds like the ultimate merger until you realize it's more of a corporate takeover. Most men think they're signing up for equality. But the truth is, what starts as our money quickly becomes her budget. What begins as our plans slowly becomes her calendar. And before he notices, it's no longer our life. It's hers. She's the CEO, and he's the employee. This isn't a partnership. It's management dressed up as love. Here's where it gets darker. The system looks reasonable on the surface. We need to save for the house. We have to think about the kids. We can't be selfish with money. Each line sounds logical, but together, they create what psychologists call a dependency structure. His earning power stays high, but his spending authority evaporates. He works harder, but for a lifestyle he didn't design, in a house he didn't pick, filled with furniture he doesn't even like. Not his dream, but hers financed by his labor. His role shifts from creator to provider, from leader to resource. And once a man's effort gets divorced from his agency, his spirit begins to fracture. That's when learned helplessness sets in. He tells himself compromise is noble, but deep down, he feels the leash tightening. And here's the loop nobody warns you about once finances are locked. The next step isn't about money at all. It's about cutting him off from the very people who might remind him of who he used to be. So the question becomes, what happens when love starts to demand isolation? Once the financial leash is secured, the next move is more subtle and more lethal. Isolation. And it rarely starts with commands. It starts with questions wrapped in concern. Don't you think you spend too much time with your friends? Wouldn't you rather be with me on Friday night? Aren't your buddies a little immature? Most men think this is love. But the truth is, it's control. It reframes friendships as competition instead of complement. It paints loyalty as a scarce resource, as if loving your friends somehow means loving your wife less. That's not intimacy, it's monopoly. And the effect is devastating. Poker night becomes monthly, then occasional, then gone. The hiking group is replaced with yard work. Spontaneous hangouts vanish under quality couple time. His world shrinks, and so does his identity. What nobody tells you is this: a man's friends don't just give him company. They anchor him to his authentic self. Without them, his perspective collapses. Without them, he forgets who he was before marriage. Without them, he becomes emotionally dependent on the very person limiting his freedom. She becomes both lifeline and warden, lover and jailer. That's not a partnership. That's captivity disguised as closeness. And once isolation is complete, the next stage kicks in. Not yelling, not rage, but something far more corrosive. The steady drip of low-level criticism that wears him down day after day. So the question is, what happens when a man starts to believe that who he is will never be enough? Once a man is cut off from his support system, the reprogramming accelerates, not through explosions of anger, but through tiny, relentless drops of criticism. You should dress better. You need to eat healthier. You watch too much sports. Each line sounds harmless on its own, but stack them together, and they deliver a brutal message: you, as you are, will never be enough. Most men think this is encouragement, but the truth is, it's erosion. Psychologists call it external locus of control. His inner compass gets replaced by her approval system. Should he buy this shirt? Is it okay to grab a beer? Can he sleep in on Saturday? He's not deciding, he's waiting for clearance. And here's the twist: this control is always deniable. When he pushes back, the criticism shifts shape. "I'm just trying to help you be your best self. Isn't improvement what relationships are about?" Now he feels guilty for resisting, guilty for even wanting to be himself. That's not love, it's gaslighting dressed as guidance. At the same time, his passions begin to vanish. Hobbies that once fed his soul get reframed as waste. Video games are childish. Sports are pointless. Music is noise. Working on cars is dirty. Not joy, but distraction. Not freedom, but immaturity. Slowly, the very activities that anchored his identity are stripped away. And what replaces them? House projects, yard work, obligations. He stays busy. Yes. Productive. Yes. But not alive. He becomes an efficient machine, generating value for others while starving his own spirit. The man who once built his life around passion now builds IKEA furniture he doesn't even like. But here's the cliffhanger. What happens when even basic freedom, like sleeping in or buying something for himself, turns into a privilege he has to negotiate? Once his hobbies are stripped away, even the simplest freedoms become privileges. Sleeping in, grabbing a drink, buying something small, all require permission. At first, it looks like courtesy. "What do you think about me doing this?" Then it becomes consultation. "Is it okay if I do this, finally?" It turns into begging. "Please let me." That's not partnership. That's a grown man asking for hall passes in his own life. Most men think this is compromise, but the truth is, it's hierarchy. He isn't an equal anymore. He's a subordinate. Psychologists call this learned helplessness when autonomy is constantly checked. Independent judgment atrophies. He stops making choices because he believes his desires don't matter. He's no longer a man with agency. He's a child seeking approval. And here's the kicker, the system tightens with guilt. Every natural want gets framed as selfish. Time alone. You're neglecting your family. A hobby. You're wasting money. It's a night out with friends. So that we're more important than me. The guilt comes in layers. Practical, we can't afford that. Morale. That's not what a good husband does. Social. What will people think? Emotional. It hurts me when you choose that over us. No matter which way he turns, he's wrong. Not love, but a guilt trip disguised as sacrifice. Over time, this rewires him. Saying yes to himself feels shameful. Saying no to himself feels noble. Therapists call this pathological selflessness, the inability to advocate for your own needs without drowning in guilt. That's not maturity. That's self-erasure. And the deeper tragedy. When we replaces aitoku, individuality dissolves. His jokes shift. His music changes. His opinions soften. One day, he wakes up and realizes he doesn't remember who he used to be. But here's the question no one asks: what happens when love doesn't just reshape behavior, but hijacks ambition itself? By this stage, the transformation is almost invisible because it feels like duty. His strength, ambition, creativity all rerouted into household utility. His physical energy fixes the gutters. His mental energy balances budgets. His emotional energy manages conflicts. He's not building his life. He's powering someone else's. Most men think this is love. But the truth is, it's conversion. Marriage doesn't kill his energy. It harvests it. He becomes a generator, not a dreamer, not a creator. A power plant fueling a home he didn't design. Success is no longer measured by joy, but by efficiency. And here's where the control turns cruel. Intimacy shifts from expression to currency. Sex stops being mutual pleasure. It becomes a performance review. Affection isn't spontaneous. It's conditional. Smile the right way, hit the right metrics, and maybe he gets rewarded. Miss the mark, and the connection shuts down. Psychologists call this conditional love, the belief that worth depends on meeting external standards. Over time, he forgets what desire feels like. He doesn't pursue love. He performs for it. He's not himself anymore. He's an actor, playing a role optimized for approval. Not a human being, but a human doing. And what happens to ambition in this setup? It gets rewritten. Promotions, personal projects, creative risks, all downgraded unless they serve the family script. Renovating the bathroom outranks writing a book. Planning a vacation beats chasing a dream. Individual success is rebranded as selfish. So he suppresses his drive. What used to be hunger becomes hesitation. What used to be adventure becomes safety. He convinces himself this is maturity, when really it's decay. But here's the real cliffhanger: if ambition dies, what fills the void? The answer isn't peace, it's anxiety. And that's where the spiral turns darker. When ambition dies, something else rushes in to take its place. Anxiety. Not peace, not contentment, but a constant buzzing fear. The man who once made bold choices without hesitation now second guesses every step. Should I text her first? Should I ask before stopping for a drink? Should I double check before buying this shirt? He isn't living. He's auditing himself. Most men think this is just being considerate. But the truth is, it's hypervigilance. Psychologists use that word to describe the state of scanning for danger 24/7. And that's what he becomes: a soldier in his own home. Decoding tone, emojis, even silence, for signs of disapproval. This anxiety eats him alive. Sleep disappears. Health collapses. Insomnia, stomach issues, depression. The confident leader who once thrived in chaos now walks on eggshells in his own kitchen. And here's the brutal irony: anxious men are easier to control than confident ones. Fear doesn't just weaken them, it domesticates them. But the system doesn't stop with his present. It rewrites his past. Slowly, his memories are edited. Bachelor days, immature, friendships, shallow, independence, selfish. He convinces himself the cage is growth, that obedience is maturity, that surrender is wisdom. What nobody tells you is this: when you change a man's memory, you erase the map back to his old self. He doesn't just lose freedom, he forgets he ever had it. The lion he once was becomes a fairy tale he barely believes. And if memory itself is hijacked, what's left to protect? That's when the system installs something far more permanent: a replacement identity designed for compliance. Once memory is rewritten, the final installation begins: a replacement identity. The authentic man, the one with fire, flaws, and freedom is dismantled. In his place grows a figure optimized for household utility. He measures his worth not by passion, but by service. Not by who he is, but by how useful he can be. Most men think this is maturity, but the truth is, it's domestication dressed as wisdom. That's why slogans like "happy wife," "happy life" spread like gospel. They sound noble, but they're really poor for obedience. They don't free him, they train him. Look around and you'll see it everywhere. Men who once laughed loud now mutter quietly. Men who once defied authority now brag about being good husbands while living like compliant employees. Each thinks this is normal because everyone around him looks the same. But what nobody tells you is, it's not a fair sample. The rebels, the escapees, the ones who refuse domestication. They're gone, filtered out by divorce, isolation, or exile. What remains visible is a world of donkeys, each mistaking captivity for the male condition. He looks around and concludes, this must be the way it is. But it isn't. It's selection bias in action. And just when the trap feels complete, the system perfects itself by passing down the script. Boys grow up watching their fathers live like servants in their own homes. They don't need lectures. They see the example. Masculinity equals utility. Love equals service. Maturity equals compliance. By the time these boys become men, they're already half broken in. They don't need heavy training. They just slip into the harness. The cycle becomes faster, tighter, harder to escape. Each generation is more efficient at producing obedient men. But here's the critical question. If the cycle can pass down, can it also be broken, and what does it actually take for a man to wake up and reclaim himself? Conclusion. No matter how deep the conditioning runs, awakening is always possible. For some men, it comes as a crack in the armor, a health scare, a career collapse, or simply the heavy weight of living too long as a shadow of themselves. One day they catch their own reflection and realize the stranger staring back is them. That moment is terrifying. But it's also the first taste of freedom, because the path out begins with ruthless honesty. Admitting how much has been lost, admitting how much was surrendered under the disguise of love or compromise, admitting that the life they've built serves everyone but themselves. The next step is separation, pulling identity away from duty. Asking the questions buried for years. Who am I beyond my roles? What do I want outside of others' demands? The rebuilding starts small, reviving forgotten passions, reconnecting with old friends, daring to say no without guilt. These aren't just actions, they are acts of reclamation. And here's the truth. This transformation into a beast of burden was never natural. It was engineered, and anything engineered can be dismantled. The system feeds on silence, guilt, and the lie that men have no choice. But there is always a choice: to choose authenticity over compliance, to choose growth over stagnation, to choose real partnership over servitude. The cage has always been disguised as love, but once you see the bars, you have to decide, will you keep carrying them, or will you finally break them? The choice is simple, even if the price is high. Remain a domesticated beast, or reclaim the man you were meant to be. If this message struck something deep, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Subscribe for more. And remember, freedom begins the moment you see the cage, and courage begins the moment you dare to open the door.